You know, it's a really strange phenomenon when we talk about trying to fix a life.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a medical issue, say you fracture your radius, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. You walk into a clinic, they take an X-ray, and the doctor just points to that jagged white line on the film. The diagnosis is totally binary. It's either broken or not broken.
And we crave that. We want that visibility so much.
We really do. It's clean, it's visible, and frankly, it's incredibly comforting to just have a problem neatly categorized like that.
We want a clear schematic for everything that goes wrong. That way we know, exactly which tool to pull out of the box to fix it.
Exactly. But the moment you transition into the realm of internal development, the landscape of spiritual formation, psychological maturity, whatever term you want to use, that diagnostic X-ray machine just shatters.
It completely falls apart.
Yeah, we are suddenly navigating incredibly murky waters. You can't
Yeah.
just like slap an X-ray on the soul and have a technician say, oh, look right there, your sense of sacred power has a hairline fracture. Or your boundaries are showing severe structural decay.
Right, because the internal life is notoriously devoid of blueprints.
Exactly.
And the prevailing attitude in, most modern spiritual circles is highly abstract. We talk about vibes or energies or flow states,
Yeah, flow states, right.
which are all very nebulous concepts. They basically leave you grasping at smoke when you actually need to build a life that can withstand a hurricane.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are speaking directly to you today, the curious learner, the seeker, who is attempting to navigate a profoundly noisy, chaotic world without, succumbing to the overwhelm.
It is so easy to get overwhelmed right now.
It really is. So I want you to construct an image in your mind. Imagine a deck of cards that completely abandons the whole trope of being a random collection of fortunes or vague daily affirmations.
Right, no vague fortunes here.
Imagine instead a living architectural blueprint, a hyper-calibrated structural schematic for building a spiritual sanctuary right in the middle of your incredibly mundane everyday life.
Because we are looking at a system that doesn't just offer you a pleasant thought to ponder over your morning coffee.
No.
It actually measures your capacity. It examines the structural integrity of your inner life and reveals the precise phase of construction you are currently enduring.
And that is the mission for this deep dive. We are undertaking an exhaustive exploration of the source materials surrounding the Shekinah Bride Oracle.
It's a massive topic.
Huge. We are going to extract the profound architectural wisdom locked inside its 78 numbered cards. Our objective is to uncover the underlying mechanisms of this deck, to understand exactly how it operates as a living architecture of formation.
And we should probably clarify up front that this text treats the human soul as a physical construct.
Yes, that's crucial.
It views the soul as a city, an
Yeah.
actual, tangible, measurable location that requires foundations, daily rhythms, controlled access points, and, fortified defenses.
Before we even get into the mechanics of that city, I have to bring up this really fascinating behind-the-scenes detail regarding the sources we reviewed for this.
Oh, the upload order.
Yes, when we were compiling the research, the source materials were actually uploaded and delivered to us completely out of sequence.
It was a mess.
There's this massive, overwhelming jumble of cards, esoteric concepts, and architectural terms, just everywhere. But when you start to map the text out, you realize there is an intensely strict, fiercely sacred order to the 6 suits of this deck.
Unyielding order.
Unyielding. They absolutely must flow in a specific sequence.
Yeah.
And those are the kingdom, the power, the glory of the city, her gates, and her walls.
The irony of receiving the materials in a chaotic jumble is that it perfectly mirrors the unformed state of the human psyche before it undergoes this process.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But the structure itself is strict. That sequence, the kingdom, the power, the glory, it's a direct, undeniable echo of the ancient doxology appended to the Lord's Prayer.
Right. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory.
Exactly. It maps to the ancient sacred structures of descending divine energy. And when this text speaks of the kingdom, it is specifically grounding us in the concept of Malkuth on the Kabbalistic tree of life.
Okay, since our audience is largely familiar with the Tree of Life, let's talk about the implications of starting with Malkuth here. Because usually, spiritual systems want to start at the top.
They want to start in Kether.
Right, the crown, the ethereal, the unmanifested light. But this oracle flips the script completely.
It grounds you immediately.
Yeah, by anchoring the kingdom in Malkuth, the text is declaring that the kingdom isn't some cloud city in the afterlife. It is the physical world. It is the new earth,
It's the lowest sphere.
meaning the divine energy has finally hit the dirt.
And that is the pivotal paradigm shift of this entire system. If you try to use this oracle to escape your physical reality, the architecture will literally reject you.
Wow.
The premise is that the spiritual must become embodied. It has to become heavy, real, and localized within you.
To facilitate that embodiment, the deck's macrostructure is divided into two massive, overarching movements.
Right.
The first movement is called the Descent. That covers the first three suits: the Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory. This is the mechanism by which divine presence moves from the heavenly realm down into the earth, into the individual vessel.
It is the vertical drop.
The vertical drop, exactly.
And once that vertical drop is complete, the architecture demands the second great movement, which is the measurement.
This encompasses the final three suits.
Right. The city, her gates, and her walls. This is where the embodied vessel is audited. And the text introduces this incredible concept of a measuring rod of secret architecture.
The golden rod, right?
Yes, specifically the city, its gates, and its walls are measured with a golden rod to the holy measure of 144.
Which is a direct homage to the book of Revelation, chapter 21, where the angel measures the New Jerusalem.
Exactly.
But the mechanism here isn't about apocalyptic prophecy. It's an internal structural test.
Yes, very internal.
The holy measure of 144 is a stress test applied to your actual daily life to see if your routine, your relationships, and your boundaries can hold the divine standard without just collapsing under the weight.
It is rigorous. It is a very rigorous audit. But before we explore the 78 measured steps of this construction, the text points us to the two unnumbered mysteries that stand entirely outside the sequence.
The bookends.
Right. These are the twin pillars that frame the entire architectural endeavor. Before card 1, standing in the void, is the mother.
The mother represents the mystery of gestation, the incubation period before the blueprint is even drawn up.
Yeah.
It's the dark, hidden space where the word gathers the matter it needs to take form.
And standing at the far end, after card 78, is La Muerta.
Oh, right.
The mystery of composting, of sacred decay, the force that strips away the scaffolding once the building is complete or, removes what failed the measurement.
So birth and death.
Exactly. Birth and death are not numbered because you cannot measure them. They are the thresholds that dictate the boundaries of the human experience itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. How exactly do you build a holy city out of an oracle deck? I mean, we have a doxology acting as a vertical descent, an apocalyptic measuring rod auditing our daily lives, and the forces of birth and death serving as bookends.
That's a lot.
How does the practitioner actually navigate this? Like, how do you progress from a raw plot of land to a fully fortified holy city?
So to understand the progression, we have to shift our perspective from the vertical descent to the horizontal axis.
Okay.
We know the divine moves from top to bottom, but the individual human moves horizontally through time, maturing through a very specific psychological and spiritual process.
The source material structures this horizontal progression through what it calls the three arcana, or the pillars.
Right.
There are 18 of these arcana total, acting as the load-bearing columns of the deck. Inside every single 13-card suit, the 1st, 7th, and 13th cards represent massive, unskippable thresholds.
The first card in any given suit is always the maiden.
Okay.
The 7th card is the Magdalena, and the 13th card is the matron.
Let's break down the psychological reality of those roles because they are crucial to this whole thing.
Definitely.
The maiden is the awakening. She is the novice. She is entirely innocent. But her primary mechanism is receptivity.
She's open to it.
Right. She is standing at the edge of a new mystery, whether that's the mystery of power or the mystery of boundaries, and she is just starting to perceive that there is something to learn.
She is receptive, but she is highly vulnerable. The text suggests that between the maiden and the Magdalena, so that's cards 2 through 6, lies the path to formation.
Which is rough.
Yeah, this is where the maiden is subjected to the friction required to initiate her.
Which brings us to the 7th card, the Magdalena. This is the initiated center. The Magdalena is no longer a novice. She carries a heavy sacred responsibility.
She's been through it.
Yeah, she has survived the initial friction, her eyes are open, and she understands the cost of the work.
The progression from the Magdalena to the matron, which spans cards 8 through 12, is arguably the most grueling part of the architecture.
I can imagine.
It is where initiated responsibility is tested until it becomes structural permanence.
Resulting in the matron at card 13, the mature guardian. The matron doesn't just understand the blueprint, her very bones have become the blueprint.
Yes.
She is the living embodiment of the suit's mystery. It's like an apprenticeship.
How do you mean?
Well, you start as the curious novice, the maiden. You become the skilled journeyman, which is the Magdalena. And finally, the master architect, the matri, who guards the blueprint.
What's fascinating here is that the text is insistent on this maiden Magdalena matron progression as a stark rejection of overnight enlightenment.
Oh, absolutely no quick fixes.
None. The bride, which is the term used for the soul undergoing this process, is forged. The mechanism of growth here relies on disruption, sustained discipline, and the agonizingly slow friction of ordinary life.
Like I said with the apprentice dynamic, you start out as the eager apprentice who barely knows how to hold the hammer without striking your own thumb.
Right, the maiden.
Then you endure the discipline to become the Magdalena, the journeyman who can actually build a wall and carry the weight of the work. But the matron is the master architect. She doesn't even need to swing the hammer anymore. Her presence alone dictates the integrity of the site.
She is the site.
Exactly. But you have to earn that status. You cannot bypass the Magdalena phase just because it's difficult.
The text is adamant about that. Bypassing the Magdalena phase results in a fragile structure that will shatter when the measuring rod of 144 is applied to it.
With the underlying mechanics of that formation clear, let's step into the first phase of the descent. We are entering Malkuth, the kingdom. This encompasses cards 1 through 13.
If we view the entire deck as the construction of a city, the kingdom suit is entirely concerned with the soil chemistry.
The dirt.
Yes. Before you can harness the electrical grid of the power or install the stained glass of the glory, you have to stabilize the ground.
The suit initiates with the maiden card, card 1, the vineyard. And the psychological mechanism here is profound. The journey does not begin with an angelic visitation on a mountaintop.
It never does.
It begins barefoot in the dirt, tending the overgrown, tangled soil of your own soul. The aspirant is asked to look at the weeds, like their defense mechanisms, their avoidance, their ego, and simply start pulling them.
The text leverages the vineyard metaphor to establish that divine arrival requires cultivation. The divine presence doesn't force its way into a concrete parking lot. It looks for tilled soil.
But the moment you start tilling that soil, you hit the first major psychological hurdle. Card 2 is the wine of abundance.
This is a tough one.
It really is. The source material spends significant time on the physiological struggle of receiving a blessing without immediately bracing for trauma.
We all do that.
Yeah, the mechanism of the maiden's nervous system is wired to believe that if something good happens, punishment is imminent. We constantly wait for the other shoe to drop.
The text identifies this as an inherited scarcity trauma. The kingdom cannot be built on a foundation of suspicious fear. The wine of abundance challenges the aspirant to hold a blessing without hoarding it or self-sabotaging it. Abundance in this framework isn't a prosperity gospel promise of wealth.
Right, it's not about getting rich.
No, it is the evidence of systemic alignment. The divine pours the wine to see if the vessel will shatter from the joy of it.
I find that concept staggering. That joy can shatter a fragile vessel just as easily as grief.
It absolutely can.
Which is why the formation path must reinforce the capacity for joy. Card 4 is the golden sistrum, referencing the ancient Egyptian percussion instrument.
The explicit lesson here is the restoration of physical joy.
Yeah, the text critiques the historical tendency to equate holiness with solemn, heavy suffering. The mechanism of the sistrum demands that the body become an instrument of praise.
Because if your spiritual architecture is rigidly solemn, it is brittle.
It'll just snap.
Exactly. The sistrum introduces flexibility. But flexibility requires profound trust, which leads directly to the purification mechanism in card 5, the rooftop bath.
This is one of the most vivid architectural metaphors in the early cards.
I love this one.
The rooftop is a liminal space. It is structurally above the chaos of the streets, yet still attached to the house. The bath represents the intimacy of purification, but the key mechanism here is the absence of shame.
Yes.
The divine washes away the old survival mechanisms and the exhaustion of the vineyard without accusation.
The text draws a sharp line between conviction and shame. Conviction shows you the dirt so you can wash it. Shame tells you that you are the dirt.
Wow, that's powerful.
The rooftop bath operates purely on mercy, preparing the nervous system for the massive shift at the center of the suit.
Which brings us to the Magdalena Center. Card 7, the King's Table. The shift in agency here is striking. You are no longer out in the soil, and you are no longer washing in private.
You are seated at the table of the sovereign.
The psychological pivot is moving from an outsider begging for scraps to an initiated participant in a covenant.
The Magdalena understands that taking a seat at the table is not a passive reward. It is a contractual obligation.
You have to do the work.
You are nourished by the kingdom so that you can become a localized distributor of the kingdom's resources.
And because you are now a distributor, the kingdom must ensure you are structurally sound. This introduces the concept of the audit. Card 9 is the measure of the bride. This is the first appearance of the measuring rod.
Right. And the text is careful to frame this measurement as an act of profound preservation, not punishment.
Okay, wait, explain that.
Well, the divine is assessing the Magdalena's internal structure, asking, if I pour the fullness of my presence into this vessel right now, will the seams hold?
I want to stress test that idea.
Yeah.
We often talk about spiritual expansion as this endless positive growth. But what the text suggests here is that being given too much spiritual weight before you are structurally ready is actually a form of destruction.
Precisely. If a bridge is rated for 2 tons, driving a 10-ton truck of pure divine energy over it will collapse the bridge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The measure of the bride reveals the hairline fractures, the hidden resentments, the unhealed ego, so they can be reinforced before the weight arrives.
And the ultimate reinforcement of that weight is depicted in card 10, the throne of clay.
The paradox here is brilliant.
It really is. You are given a throne, a seat of authority, but it is constructed of the exact same dirt you were tilling back in card 1.
Right back to the vineyard.
The mechanism of the throne of clay is embodied authority rooted in absolute, undissociated humility.
If an aspirant separates their spiritual authority from their human vulnerability, they become a tyrant.
Completely.
The clay is a mnemonic device. It forces the ruler to remember their own mortality and their connection to the earth.
Which culminates perfectly in the Matron of the Kingdom suit, card 13, the Holy Mountain.
The soul has evolved from a small patch of dirt to a towering, unshakable geographic feature.
But the matron holds this massive elevation without a trace of superiority. She has simply become a localized site of communion. The soil is stabilized, the kingdom is established.
And with the earth prepared, the architecture can now accommodate the electrical grid. We transition into the second phase of the descent, the power, cards 14 through 26.
We have to completely deconstruct the standard definition of power before we touch these cards.
Oh, absolutely.
In the modern secular world, power is almost exclusively defined as the capacity to exert force over others. It is domination.
Command and control.
Yeah, but the source material radically redefines sacred power.
In this esoteric framework, sacred power is defined as absolute frictionless alignment with divine will.
Frictionless. I like that.
It is not the ego pushing, it is the vessel opening to allow a larger force to move through it.
The maiden of this suit awakens to this reality in card 14, the logos, the creative word. The text posits a fascinating mechanism here. True power does not begin with action. It begins with the frequency of clean speech.
The assertion is that an aspirant's power is fundamentally leaked and fractured through distorted language.
Like gossiping.
Exactly. We hemorrhage power when we speak out of alignment. Gossip, flattery, saying yes when the body screams no, speaking from unhealed wounds, all of this degrades the architectural integrity of the soul.
So the logos demands that the maiden treat her vocal cords as an instrument of creation.
Yes. She must learn the agonizing discipline of letting a thought sit on the altar of the heart, auditing it for truth before allowing it to cross her teeth.
That is a staggering level of self-regulation. But once the speech is purified, the vessel must be sealed. Card 15 is the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is the ultimate container.
The lesson here is that power must be housed in a consecrated space. The mechanism of the ark is containment, not display.
Right, you don't just show it off.
A common trap for the novice is wanting to immediately show off their spiritual insights or their newly awakened power.
Look what I can do.
Exactly. The ark teaches that authority begins in the dark. What are you allowing to reside in your internal holy of holies? You cannot store sacred power next to a stash of petty resentments.
Because if the container is compromised, what comes next will destroy it.
The volatile elements.
Yeah, cards 16 and 17 introduce the volatile elements, the tongues of fire and a fiery whirlwind. The fire cauterizes the speech, burning away the remaining dross. But the whirlwind, well, the text describes this as a divine motion that arrives to aggressively disrupt stagnation.
The maiden of power must learn not to panic when the environment becomes chaotic. The whirlwind scatters the scaffolding that is no longer necessary.
I have to pause and challenge this because it sounds incredibly risky. How does a practitioner distinguish between a divine disruption sent to clear away dead wood and just a catastrophic life choice or a toxic environment?
That's a fair point.
Isn't advising someone to surrender to a fiery whirlwind a recipe for tolerating abuse or chaos?
That is the crucial discernment of the parasuit. The text delineates between chaotic destruction, which leaves you diminished and fearful, and divine disruption, which, while terrifying, leaves the core architecture intact and actually increases your capacity for clarity. The divine whirlwind only takes what is false. If you try to control the divine whirlwind with your ego, you will break. The surrender is not to the chaos. The surrender is to the divine governing the chaos.
That distinction is vital, and the necessity of that governance leads directly into the Magdalena's center of the suit. Card 20, the seven spirits before the throne.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the pivot point of the aspirant's relationship with force. You have the fire, you have survived the whirlwind, you are holding the mantle of power.
But you don't move yet.
Right. Before you take a single step forward to act, the architecture demands that you halt. Power must kneel.
The text lists the seven spirits from the Isaiah tradition: wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and reverence.
The mechanism here is the governance of impulse.
Yeah, you might have the power to dismantle someone with a word, or the power to force a door open, but the Magdalena must consult the counsel of heaven first.
Ungoverned power is a cancer in any spiritual system.
A cancer.
The Magdalena realizes that her authority is not diminished by seeking counsel. Her authority is validated by her willingness to be corrected by wisdom.
This disciplined approach to force materializes in card 21, the dove of discipline, and card 22, the keys of the kingdom.
The dove ensures that authority remains softened by the spirit.
But the keys, well, the source material treats access as the heaviest responsibility of all.
A key is a mechanism of binary choice, open or closed. The text argues that the possession of a key does not mandate its use.
Exactly. Just because you have the psychological insight to open up a friend's hidden trauma doesn't mean you have the clearance to turn that key.
Discretion is the hallmark of spiritual power.
You have to know what to lock down to protect the city and what to unlock when the time of isolation is over.
Which brings the entire concept of power to its paradoxical zenith. The matron completion of the suit is card 26, the power made perfect.
The paradigm shift here is absolute. The listener needs to understand that in this architecture, power is perfected precisely at the moment of total surrender.
The ego's force is completely nullified.
Right. The matron of power is not straining. She's not flexing her spiritual muscles to bend the universe to her demands.
She has become such a flawless, unobstructed conduit for the divine will that there is no friction left.
Zero friction.
Her weakness, her human limitation, becomes the exact aperture through which the infinite power flows.
So the soil is stabilized, the electrical grid of governed power is installed. We now reach the final stage of the descent. Section 4, the glory. Cards 27 through 39.
If the kingdom is the foundation and the power is the capacity, the glory is the aesthetic radiance.
The stained glass.
Exactly. It is the visible manifestation of love. It is the Shekinah making herself known within the architecture.
The ignition sequence begins with the maiden card, card 27, the Shekinah flame. The text describes a visceral realization.
The soul recognizes that it isn't just undergoing a self-improvement project.
No, it is literally being lit from within by an uncreated light.
But the text immediately introduces a vital mechanism regarding how that light is tended. Card 28, the Spirit and the Bride, deals explicitly with the law of consent.
The divine issues the invitation, come, but it exerts zero coercion.
That is a critical point. The bride is not drafted into this process against her will. She must actively choose the preparation.
The mechanism of glory requires the human will to meet the divine offer. You cannot passively consume your way into radiance.
And part of that active preparation is facing the reality of what you're becoming. Card 30 is the mirror of glory.
For the psychological block here is intense. The text argues that false humility is just as toxic as arrogance.
Oh, definitely.
The aspirant looks in the mirror of glory and sees the divine light radiating from their own face, and their immediate reflex is to look away.
We do that all the time.
We say, no, I'm just a flawed human, I'm a mess, I can't hold that light.
But the mirror of glory demands that you drop the performance of unworthiness. It forces the maiden to look at her own reflection without the distortion of shame and accept that the divine has chosen her as a residence.
Refusing to see the light is a refusal of the divine's judgment.
To hold that light steadily, the vessel must be completely unified. Card 32, the Sacred Union, addresses the internal fragmentation of the psyche.
The source text suggests that you cannot hold the glory of the Shekinah if your spirit is constantly at war with your body, or if your intellectual discipline is trying to suffocate your emotional desire.
A house divided against itself cannot stand the holy measure.
No.
The sacred union is the internal synthesis of all disparate parts of the self, creating a seamless surface that can reflect the light without scattering it.
Once that internal synthesis is achieved, we enter the deepest mystery of the suit, the Magdalena Center. Card 33, the inner chamber.
This is the hidden epicenter of the entire architecture. The text draws a stark contrast between public radiance and hidden intimacy.
I think of it like the root system of a massive oak tree. The visible foliage, the branches catching the sunlight, that's your public ministry, your external radiance. But if the root system, plunging deep into the absolute dark of the earth, isn't equally massive, the entire tree will topple the moment a storm hits. The inner chamber is the root system.
It is the space where the soul rests with the divine with zero agenda. No requests, no intercession, no work, just communion.
It's just being there.
The initiated Magdalena knows that if she does not retreat to the inner chamber to be replenished by love, her external radiance will become radioactive.
Radioactive.
Yeah, it will burn her out and it will burn the people around her.
That dynamic tension between the hidden and the visible brings us to the matron completion of the glory suit. It's a two-step progression. We see card 38, the rising radiance, where the deep internal work finally breaks the surface and becomes undeniably visible to the world.
But then,
Right. The absolute culmination of the descent, card 39, is radiance veiled. And I have to push back on the text here.
okay, let's hear it.
Why on earth, after 38 cards of painstaking preparation to hold the light, is the final step to put a veil over it? Isn't the whole point to shine?
This raises an important question, and it seems counterintuitive until you examine the mechanism of sanctity. The text argues that true maturity is unbothered by visibility.
Okay.
Radiance is not a performance metric. The matron veils her radiance because she understands right timing and the economy of grace.
So she isn't hiding out of fear. She's concealing the light to protect its sacredness from becoming a public spectacle.
Exactly. The moon does not cease to be luminous simply because a cloud passes over it.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
In a culture utterly obsessed with broadcasting every ounce of light we possess for validation, the matron is a revolutionary figure. She knows that she can be seen without being consumed by the gaze of the crowd, and she can remain entirely hidden without fear of disappearing.
The light belongs to the covenant, not the audience.
Precisely.
That is a staggering place to conclude the descent. The vertical drop is complete. Heaven has come down. The soil is ready. The power is governed. The glory is established. Now, the architecture turns 90 degrees.
We enter the horizontal axis.
Right. We enter the second great movement, the measurement. We are stepping into the horizontal axis of daily human life. Can your Tuesday morning actually hold the holy measure of 144?
Here's where it gets really interesting.
We enter section 5, the city, cards 40 through 52.
The pivot here is jarring for many mystics. The text yanks the aspirant out of the ethereal heights and drops him straight into the mundane mechanics of adulthood.
Right into the calendar.
The Shekinah isn't auditing your ecstatic visions anymore. She is auditing your calendar.
The architecture of the ordinary. It initiates with the maiden, card 40, the waking word. The mechanism here is the literal first moments of consciousness.
The text posits that the very first thoughts and words of your morning set the architectural grid for the entire day.
If your first action upon waking is to flood your nervous system with the chaotic dread of the news cycle or the demands of an inbox, you have laid a foundation of anxiety.
The waking word is the discipline of claiming the first breath for the divine, establishing the perimeter of peace before the world is allowed to speak.
Which flows directly into the most surprisingly profound cards of the deck. Card 42, the sacred schedule, and card 45, the sacred ledger.
We are talking about time blocking and budgeting as core spiritual practices.
That is just so practical.
The mechanism the text relies on here is structural repetition. An unbudgeted life is an uncontained life. The Shekinah cannot fill a sieve.
Let's look at the mechanism of the sacred schedule. The human brain suffers from intense decision fatigue. If you wake up every day and have to reinvent your routine, your cognitive load is maxed out before noon.
You have no energy left for the divine.
The text is applying the ancient monastic concept of the liturgy of the hours to modern lay people. A strict schedule isn't a prison, it is a load-bearing wall. It carries the weight of the day so your soul doesn't have to.
And the sacred ledger applies that exact same structural integrity to financial resources.
Money,
Right. Modern spirituality often treats money as a crass, unspiritual topic, but the text is ruthless here. The city requires resources ordered toward the mission. The ledger is a moral document. It shows exactly what you worship.
The altar and the bank ledger must agree. That line from the source material is devastating.
It doesn't let you off the hook.
You cannot claim to worship the divine while your resources are entirely channeled into the empire of lack. Generosity must be matched by stewardship, otherwise you are just depleting the city's reserves.
As the aspirant masters this internal administration, she must step out into the public square.
Right.
Cards 43 and 44, the market priestess and the beauty way, define how the sacred operates in commerce and public exchange.
The market priestess is about handling transactions with absolute clean integrity. No manipulation, no extracting more than is fair. And the beauty way is a fascinating concept regarding one's energetic field.
It isn't about physical aesthetics.
Right. It's about the atmosphere you carry into a room.
The mechanism of the beauty way is the conscious restoration of dignity to spaces that have been brutalized by commerce. How do you speak to the person ringing up your groceries?
Do you introduce an atmosphere of unhurried grace into a chaotic boardroom?
It is the feminine principle operating confidently in the marketplace.
Which leads us to the Magdalena center of the city. Card 46, the elect lady. This is the blueprint for structural authority within a community.
The text establishes a very specific metric for authority here. The elect lady does not derive her power from self-appointment, nor from enforcing submission.
How is it measured?
Her authority is measured entirely by the vulnerable people her structure protects.
If you claim spiritual leadership, but your presence does not make the environment demonstrably safer for the marginalized, the innocent, and the exhausted, the Shekinah does not recognize your crown.
Authority is a vessel of shelter, full stop.
But the elect lady knows that a city cannot be sustained by a single pillar. The architecture demands community. Card 47 is the sacred sisterhood, and card 49 is the sacred neighbor.
The mechanism of community is the distribution of weight. The sacred sisterhood represents the peers who will challenge your blind spots, hold the line when you are here, and refuse to let you settle for counterfeit light.
And the sacred neighbor grounds that conceptually into the physical reality of borrowing a tool, checking on someone who is grieving, and respecting property lines. It's the localized physical manifestation of love.
All of this mundane, rigorous daily structuring leads to the matron completion of the city. Card 52, the Hieros Gamos, the sacred union.
We usually think of the Hieros Gamos as this lofty, abstract, alchemical marriage of the sun and moon, but the text places it at the culmination of the schedule and the ledger.
The mechanism here is that when the mundane life is perfectly ordered and consecrated, the ordinary kitchen sink becomes the bridal chamber.
You do not need to abandon the physical world to find union with the divine.
Not at all.
The prepared city, with its clean finances, its protected borders, its healthy community, becomes the exact coordinates where heaven and earth merge seamlessly. The horizontal and vertical axes meet.
But a city is completely useless if it is entirely sealed off. A city requires commerce, relationship, and movement.
Which brings us to Section 6, the architecture of holy access. Her gates. Cards 53 through 65. The fundamental question of this suit is, how do you open up to the world without abandoning your structural integrity?
It is the most delicate architectural challenge, especially for an aspirant who has suffered betrayal or trauma. The default psychological reflex is to build massive walls and seal them with no gates.
To shut everyone out.
Right. But the text warns that a fortress without a gate is just a tomb.
The maiden of this suit has to relearn how to open the door. Card 53, the gate of trust. The source text makes a profound distinction that is crucial for anyone recovering from a fracture. Trust is not a regression into naivete.
Naivete is throwing the gates wide open to everyone and hoping they behave.
Exactly.
The mechanism of holy trust is the calibrated capacity to recognize what is genuinely worthy of entry. A holy gate does not yield to pressure, it opens only to resonance.
And sometimes you are standing at the wall and there is no gate visible. The text addresses this waiting period in card 57, the hidden gate, and card 58, the gate of praise.
The mechanism of the hidden gate is learning to run your hands along the cold stone in the dark, waiting for the subtle seam to reveal itself, rather than trying to blow a hole in the wall with your own ambition.
And the gate of praise is the mechanism of clearing the threshold. If complaint and bitterness have become the gatekeepers of your heart, the text argues that you will literally be too energetically dense to pass through the door.
Praise is the frequency that restores proportion to reality, reminding you that alongside the heavy stone, there is also light.
This recalibration leads to the most controversial card in the suit, the Magdalena Center. Card 59, the Gate of the Unshamed. Now, we need to stress test this thoroughly.
Okay, let's do it.
Modern culture is currently obsessed with shamelessness. It's often branded as this empowering mandate to do whatever you want, consequences be damned, and if anyone critiques you, they are shaming you. Is the text advocating for this modern definition of shamelessness?
It is explicitly rejecting the modern definition.
Okay, good.
The shamelessness of the modern ego is fundamentally anarchic. It destroys the city. The unshaming of the initiated Magdalena is entirely different. The Magdalena does not confuse alignment with anarchy.
So what is the mechanism of being unshamed in this architecture?
The mechanism is removing shame from the role of gatekeepers. The Magdalena refuses to let external judgment or past trauma dictate where she is allowed to walk. However, she retains immaculate standards.
So it's not a free-for-all.
No. The ego's shamelessness says, I can do whatever I want. The Magdalena's unshamed gate says, I am washed clean, I am clothed in dignity, and therefore only truth, love, and restoration are permitted to cross my threshold. She operates from a center of deep purity, not defensive rebellion.
That is a brilliant distinction. She operates from dignity, not defense. And that dignity is heavily tested when we approach the realm of relationship.
Card 62.
Yes, the gate of the beloved. The text asks the aspirant to discern the agonizingly subtle difference between being desired and being loved.
The psychological mechanism here is acute. Desire is fundamentally a consuming force. Desire rushes the gate.
It wants to get in.
It creates an atmosphere of urgency because it wants to acquire the resources inside the city.
But love, well, the text says love reverences the gate. Love can withstand the waiting. Love does not demand that you hand over the master keys to your inner sanctuary on the first night.
Love stands at the threshold and respects the architecture.
Which is why the matron completion of this suit is card 65, the Magdalene Watchtower. The matron of access does not just stand at the gate. She ascends to the watchtower above it.
She achieves an elevated vantage point.
The text describes her watching the horizon, observing what is approaching the city and what is leaving, but the core mechanism is that she watches with devotion, not paranoia.
Paranoia assumes everything is a threat.
Right. Devotion knows the value of what is inside the city and simply monitors the perimeter to ensure the conditions for love are maintained. She welcomes without being gullible, and she denies entry without an ounce of bitterness.
But as we noted, a gate is only functionally relevant if it is placed within a structure that can actually keep things out.
The walls.
This brings us to the final and perhaps most misunderstood phase of the architecture. Section 7, the architecture of sacred protection, her walls, cards 66 through 78.
Spiritual communities have a terrible habit of demonizing walls. The rhetoric is always tear down your walls, as if any form of self-protection is a failure of universal love.
It's a very common trope.
But the source material flips that completely.
In this esoteric blueprint, a wall is not constructed out of fear. A holy wall is the physical boundary that creates the specific conditions necessary for love to dwell safely.
A city without walls is not a sanctuary. It is a public thoroughfare where the altar is constantly trampled by passing traffic.
The Maiden of the Walls has to learn this boundary setting through harsh experience. Card 66 is the false light.
Oh, this is a tricky one.
The text introduces the mechanism of spiritual counterfeits. The maiden learns the painful lesson that not everything that glows is holy.
Spiritual bypassing. Charismatic leaders with zero accountability. The demand for unquestioning submission clothed in the language of enlightenment. These are the false light.
The maiden's optical sensors are recalibrated. She learns to trust the quiet, steady resonance of structural peace over the loud, blinding urgency of spiritual glamour.
And as her vision clears, she begins to recognize the toxic systems operating at the perimeter of her life. Card 67 is the chain of coercion, and card 68 is the empire of lack.
The text defines these as the primary forces besieging the holy city.
The chain of coercion is the mechanism of conditional love. It is any system or relationship that demands your bondage, your silence, or your shrinking as the price of admission. The holy wall refuses to allow coercion to enter.
And the empire of lack is the psychological siege of scarcity. It's the pervasive cultural broadcast that there is never enough time, never enough money, never enough grace.
It's exhausting.
The empire of lack tries to starve the city into surrender, forcing the aspirant to hoard resources and view everyone as a competitor. The wall acts as an electromagnetic shield against that frequency, maintaining the internal reality of the wine of abundance.
Which brings us to the ultimate test of discernment. Card 69, the crown without heart.
The text is ruthless here. It demands that the aspirant measure the authority structures in their life. Bosses, political figures, spiritual gurus, and even their own internal taskmasters.
If the authority wears a crown but lacks the heart of compassion, the wall must be shut against it. The Shekinah measures all authority by the heart. Unloving power is barred from the city.
To enforce these boundaries, the architecture requires a weapon, the Magdalena center of the final suit. Card 72, the Sword of Truth.
I want to look closely at the mechanism of this sword because it is so easy to misinterpret. We hear Sword of Truth and we imagine a broadsword that we use to hack our enemies to pieces in self-righteous fury.
But the text describes a much more precise instrument.
It functions as a surgical scalpel.
The Magdalena is entrusted with the power of clean division.
Clean division, meaning she can cut away the toxic entanglement, she can sever the lie, she can extract the manipulation without lacerating her own soul with hatred in the process.
The text emphasizes that she wields the blade with tears in her eyes and absolute steadiness in her hand.
She severs the connection to save the life of the city. The mechanism of the sword is protection, not punishment.
And she holds that line perpetually. Card 74, the tolerated contempt, is the mechanism of refusing to normalize disrespect.
The text notes that the human psyche has a dangerous capacity to acclimate to contempt. The Magdalena refuses to grow numb. She will not allow contempt to build a nest in the rafters of her city.
Because the entire purpose of the wall is the covenant. Card 75, the Ring of Covenant, is the reminder that the stone isn't there to keep you isolated. It is there to protect a sacred vow.
You endure the labor of building the wall because the intimacy contained within it is unspeakably precious.
Which brings us to the absolute culmination of the entire 78-card structure, the matron of her walls, the final threshold of the architecture. Card 78, the Heavenly Gate.
The text describes a staggering transformation here. The mechanism of the wall reaches its zenith. The protection has been so thoroughly purified by love, so completely devoid of fear, that the wall ceases to function as a barrier.
It doesn't end in a fortified bunker of isolation.
No, the wall opens upward.
The measuring rod of 144 has audited the entire structure. The soil of the kingdom is stable, the electrical fire of the power is governed, the glory is held in the inner chamber.
The daily ledger of the city is clean. The gates are washed with devotion, and the walls have severed the false light.
Because the structure has passed the test, the wall transmutes into a gateway.
Everything guarded by love was being prepared for heaven's entrance. That's from the text. The architecture is complete. The mundane human vessel has been mathematically, spiritually, and psychologically engineered to hold the full weight of the divine presence.
The descent is finalized.
The measurement is met.
It is the masterpiece of internal formation. You do not go to a holy place. You have done the excruciating work of becoming one.
To look back at the scope of this, we started barefoot in the dirt of the vineyard, battling our own nervous system's fear of abundance. We navigated the fiery whirlwind, learned to silence our own distorted speech, scheduled our days, balanced our bank accounts, healed our trauma around trust, and finally learned to wield a surgical sword against the empire of scarcity.
The Shekinah Oracle does not give you a shortcut.
It gives you the living architecture of your own becoming.
It proves that you are both the raw building material and the final, glorious sanctuary.
So what does this all mean for you today? As we close this incredibly dense blueprint, I want to leave you, the listener, with a specific structural question to examine in your own life.
The text insists that the spiritual isn't out in the ether.
No, it is in the concrete reality of your Tuesday. If your morning routine, the way you speak to your neighbor, your bank ledger, and your boundaries are the literal physical bricks of your spiritual architecture, what kind of city are you constructing right this very second? And who, or what, is holding the keys to its gates?
An audit we all must face.
Thank you for taking this massive deep dive with us, for examining the schematics, and for exploring the profound blueprint of the Holy City. Keep tilling the soil, keep measuring with love, and we will catch you on the next one.